is there an overarching takeaway for you that stands out above the rest of the awesome things that we're going to get into?
Those two incredible games led me to have my first wet dream in more than 15 years.
After a long wait, we are finally back on the Starting 502 podcast. Presley, Meyer and Jake Hook on the other end, coming to you live from the Kern's Corner studios, brought to you as always by Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Did a fabulous job out there at TBT in the last few weeks. Jake Hook, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I came on this podcast to strictly talk Bahamas and no TBT. I want that to be very clear right now.
Goes without saying. Obviously, as we've been saying, TBT, not super important. We don't really care.
Nope.
We've been saying this over and over. And
it's an alumni tournament. Who cares?
Listen, so yeah. Come on. What we really want to talk about is the Baha Bullies. And Jake, what I do have to say, we started doing this podcast specifically a basketball specific endeavor, basically like midway through the Chris Mack era. So going into, I guess it would have been his second season is when we started this podcast. Is Will Reddington and I. During that time, Louisville made it to number one in the country. Those were the good times. Then we had COVID. During COVID, obviously things kind of fell apart. Nick Connor and I kind of taking the reins there. As we go into the next season, is really when shit hits the fan, when Chris Mack is suspended for the first 6 games. I eventually just started taking the reins by myself, doing this podcast after every single game, win or lose. And there was a lot of losses in the Mike Pegues era. I think they won 2 games when he was the head coach on the back end of that. And then we kind of parlayed that into the Kenny Payne era, where that was just a litany of co-hosts during that time. And during that time, it was miserable. Last year and then going into this year, and Jake, you've kind of been along for the ride for just the shitstorm that was the Kenny Payne era. And so we've come a long way. Since we started doing this, we had all kinds of grandiose, plans that we're going to do amazing things with this podcast and do a post-game show and have people call in and text in and really make it like the first, post-game podcast, if you will. And then we just could not win a game to save our lives, and nobody gave 2 shits at all. So it's with all of that in mind, I think we've taken our lumps enough to look at the last week, really look at the last 3 months, but especially the last week, when we're finally seeing the product out on the floor, when we're seeing, what would I say, what we suspected could have happened come to fruition, essentially. When we're seeing that actually play out on the floor, Louisville dropping 111 points in both games down in the Bahamas, taking shit seriously, it appears. We have every right to be excited and enjoy this for what it is, which is 2 exhibition games 100 days before the season even starts, but could not have gone any better for a number of reasons. So I'll kind of throw it to you, Jake. I mean, immediate takeaways here. Is there an overarching takeaway for you that stands out above the rest of the awesome things that we're going to get into?
Those two incredible games led me to have my first wet dream in more than 15 years. And Coach Pat Kelsey has everything to do with that. But seriously, I mean, incredible. Like you said, I don't think could have gone any better. I don't think that if I could have pre-written how this was going to go, I don't think I could have selected anything better to happen. I mean, you saw ball movement, you saw communication, you saw defense, you saw energy, you saw effort, you saw dudes that you didn't even expect to play. Like I knew that a lot of these guys were talented. I was curious about Kenai Ruths. I knew that he had the potential to be talented, but I thought that he was young and maybe the speed of the game would be a little too fast for him, which at times I think it was, but even he shocked me. He impressed me. Every guy that stepped on the floor, I was like, you have a role. I know exactly what you can do for this team. You will have an important moment. Even Frank on Salim eBay will have a time whenever we're overmatched inside on the interior, and he's going to have to come in because he's 6'11", 260 pounds. So I could not be more thrilled. I have watched the games. Think I've watched it 6 times now, each game 3 times. I mean,
Holy shit,
and I'll probably watch another 6 times.
You're an addict is what you are.
I'm
Do you
addicted.
watch them at least, like, do you skip forward? Do you watch them? Like, sometimes I listen to podcasts at like 1.2 speed or 1.4 speed or something like that to kind of speed through it and gain the knowledge that I need, but maybe not sit there for 2 hours or whatever it is. Is it like that? Or you just like sit there and you soak it all in? Like, you watch the commercial breaks and
no, don't endure the commercial breaks again. I watched the first 2 live, obviously. And then while I was at work, I'll watch and I'll kind of like, you got the 5-second like little skip that you can do. So if I miss like someone got fouled, I'm not going to rewatch that. So instead of taking 2 hours to watch the game, it takes me like an hour and 15 minutes because I'm skipping commercials and whatnot. And then my parents came over this weekend and we watched them together too. So 6 times, and I'm not bored yet. It's got incredible rewatchability.
You were incredibly sick in the head, but I love it. I mean, as somebody who talks about, apparently I tell people too much now that I went to 26 games during the Kenny Payne era.
You're going to get put on some sort of watch list. You probably won't be able to buy a gun.
you might be sicker than I am. What a sentence to follow up your previous sentence. But anyways, I mean, I want to dive into this, pretty in depth here as well. I guess the first question that I would ask, going into, kind of post Bahamas, this lull here essentially between August and October when we have our first, preseason exhibition game. As we enter that period, my question for you would be, how much of the excitement is a product of juxtaposing what we saw basically since COVID, right? Like how much of this is we haven't seen good basketball in so long that anything would have satisfied us. Anything would have been satiating compared to the last 3 years. Is there something to be said about that, or can we kind of look at this objectively enough as basketball fans, as people who have watched the game 6 times? Are we taking too much from this, or what's the percentage there? I mean, how hyped are we allowed to get?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say percentage wise, if this would have been Pat Kelsey's 3rd year and we looked like this, obviously would still be excited. There's a lot of talent on the floor, but I think probably 10-20% more excited just because of how bad the basketball has been. It's sad to say, but in the 2 games that we watched this week in the Bahamas, exhibition games that are truly meaningless and will never be thought of again probably once the regular season starts, that was more exciting, more enjoyable than basically since we lost our first exhibition game in Kenny Payne's first season. Like I enjoyed that more than I did the last 2 seasons. So I mean, and part of it's just because we're winning, we look good, but it's just such an exciting brand of basketball. And it's an identity, and you know who you are. We knew who we were under Rick Pitino. We knew we were pressed. We knew we were fast-paced. We knew we played great defense. Now we know who we are, and we have something. And with Kenny Payne, I don't think Kenny Payne knew who the team was or who anyone was. So we're talented, and we have this identity that I think people are getting behind and getting excited to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about just seeing competence out there, right? I mean. I know that that's a very low bar that was set, but I think that, no matter who the coach was that came in, right? Say it was Scott Drew, say it was John Calipari. Like, I'm just throwing names out there. Say it was a big name coach, which by all means, Pat Kelsey was not a name that was on a bunch of people's radars coming in, but say it was anybody on the sidelines there. I don't think that you could have aspired to, especially after the last 2 seasons, aspired to seeing the cohesiveness and the togetherness and the excitement that the style of play brought. I don't think if you had Bill Self on the sidelines there, in the same situation, I don't think it could have gone much better. I really don't. And there's a lot to be said to that. And there's a lot to be said about the way that this team has gelled as a whole. Were there any moments that kind of stood out to you? I mean, to me, a moment that stood out as far as like showing the cohesiveness of the team was when James Scott went up for a breakaway dunk, and a guy tried to kind of come up and contest it, but really just kind of raked him across the arm. He fell pretty hard. This was in the first game against the Bahamas select team. Noah Waterman, who was injured for the first game, came out, or kind of took James Scott onto the bench with him, and basically helped calm him down. Kelsey came over. The whole team was just kind of around him, not consoling him necessarily, just talking to him about like, it's cool, we're good. Like, I just, it was little stuff like that to me that just shows like they're picking each other up. Literally, anytime somebody falls, 2, 3, 4 guys sprint and help pick the guy up. Anytime that there's a made basket, they immediately run, grab the ball, and inbound the ball and get it up the floor as fast as they possibly can. The cohesiveness and the overall vision for the plan that the coaching staff has is, I mean, they couldn't be any more locked in. And there's something to be said as well about the fact that they're, kind of getting a freebie trip, right? They're in the Bahamas. They're like in one of the best places in the world to go to a water park, to hang out by the pool, to, look at pretty girls or whatever it is that you do for 10 days down in the Bahamas. And they were locked in. Like, there was no vacation vibes whatsoever. Were there any moments that kind of stood out to you that kind of showed like this is really different, something that we're watching here?
I think it was the very first offensive possession that we had, win the tip against Bahamas Select, and it was get into the offense, and it was like 3 purposeful passes with hard cuts, with solid off-ball screens that led to a wide open 3-pointer for Kasean Pryor. And it is perfect that it goes in. I mean, it could have missed it, but it went in and it was perfect. And from that moment, it was just like, this is different. This is basketball. This is a standard of basketball that we can expect and we can be happy with. So, I mean, from literally the first 15 seconds, you could just tell immediately that it's not anything like what we've watched the last 2 seasons. And I'm just so impressed. I mean, I tweeted about it, but this is the most I've been watching Louisville basketball since my first memory. I'm 27, so my first memory is probably like solid memories like 04 team in that area. I'm born in 96. And I remember some of those teams, I was young, but they moved the ball really well. They had very even scoring. But God, this might be the most unselfish Louisville basketball team I've ever seen in my life. And they've been playing together for a little more than 2 months now. Like it's insane to me how well oiled as a team they look in 2 months of practice.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a purpose around everything in this program now. I'm sitting here while you're talking, thinking about, do you think that the Calgary Dinos would have beat 2022 Lenore Ryan? I know that's a weird comparison to make, but it's relevant. I mean,
I think Calgary Dinos would have beat either of Kenny Payne's last 2 teams, honestly, especially the first team. Probably
it's at least a close game.
Yes.
It's at least like, I mean, they were a quality shooting team, and that team, those teams were notoriously bad at defending the 3.
Mm-hmm.
They're, really good at stopping the ball, but something that the team had to kind of adjust to in the second game. Game 1, Bahamas select team, it really is kind of a hodgepodge of all-star players from the Bahamas, right? So you have like a 13-year-old thrown in there, a 38-year-old veteran thrown in there. So it's more of like an all-star team type of feel. Calgary is a team that brought back their top 7 players from a season ago, and a team that has really played some quality games against, similar opponents, meaning, maybe a high to mid-level D1 team over the last few years, and played teams pretty close for the most part. So, I I know it's a weird comparison to make, but I mean, Louisville was pretty much handled by Lenore Ryan in a scrimmage in Kenny Payne's first year. And then to turn around and see a team that's, probably better than that and Louisville just runs them out of the gym for 40 straight minutes, it's the juxtaposition. We don't want to keep bringing up the Kenny Payne era and that sort of thing, but the juxtaposition between that era and this new era in such a short period of time. I mean, it needs to be pointed out. It needs to be pointed out that just how good of a job that this staff is doing. Not only that, I mean, it's only been, like we've said a few times now, it's only been 3 to 4 months at this juncture. We're not even talking about the season doesn't start for another 100 days. And that's perhaps what stands out to me the most is just the culture around this team and the way that everybody is gelling because of that.
Yeah, I think we've been putting this roster together for 3 or 4 months, but I think they've only been practicing for maybe even less than 2. So it's so impressive. And yeah, that Calgary team, the more you talk about it, they would probably beat Lenore Ryan by 10, 15 points, if I had to guess, maybe even 20, because they played Wichita State last year, lost by 11, played Yale last year, lost by 6, and they returned their top 7 scorers from that team last year. I thought that it was exciting to watch us beat that Bahamas select team. But after 2 quarters, it kind of started to resemble more of an all-star game than it did like a true, like, okay, this is a good matchup. But like that Calgary team, like they were a well-coached team. They had individually talented players. They had good shooters almost everywhere. They had a big man that, good Lord, was as strong as an ox. Not super talented, but strong. So that thought it was a good test to see what we look like against a team that is actually a team, is well-coached, and has a comparable level of talent to, I think I've heard people say they're like a MEAC team or they're like a SoCon team. Like they're probably like a mid-level SoCon team, which last 2 years we would not be beating them. So to beat that team by 40, and probably could have beat them by 50 if we really needed to, 60 if we really needed to, just super impressive. And everybody did something that impressed me. There was not a single player that stepped on the court where I was like, man, he's lost. Do we need him?
Right.
All 11 dudes that stepped on the floor, I was like, he played well. He did something well. He has a purpose.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Bahamas select team does against Rhode Island when they play on the 8th. So August 8th, they'll play Rhode Island. And it looks like, I think that same Calgary team is going to play Rhode Island as well. Okay. They were scheduled to play, it says on the website they were scheduled to play in May. It would make more sense if they were scheduled to play this coming week. Yes. I don't know why. I don't know what the connection would have been there. It might just be a typo. It says on the website 5/8/24, but there's no score or anything associated with that game. So
I wonder if that's just the way they're doing their dates. They're putting the date first and then the month and then the year like they do internationally.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe tomorrow,
right.
Maybe the 5th, we'll record this on the 4th, maybe on the 5th they'll play each other. I'd have to get some confirmation on that. But I'm interested just to see, how do those teams stack up against other squads? And, Rhode Island is not like, some powerhouse or anything, but they're, they'll definitely field a quality squad this season. So something that I'd be interesting in seeing is just how they stack up. I think another thing that stands out in a major way is the lineup versatility of this squad. You start out with starters of, let me make sure I get this right here. You start out with starters of James Scott, Terrence Edwards, Kasean Pryor, Chucky Hepburn, and Kadir Talori in both games. But really, I mean, I think you could make a good case for 8 or 9 guys starting on this team. And I think that, as you suggested before, Jake, I think that you could absolutely have maybe 8, 10 different starting lineups over the course of the season. Can you speak to how much that lineup versatility matters? Where do you see that really benefiting Louisville the most this season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it matters who starts. I think we talked about it a few months ago whenever the roster was officially settled. We had our 13 scholarship players. I thought it would be Terrence Edwards, Kasean Pryor, Chucky Hepburn, Javon Hadley, and Corin Johnson. And there's a couple players off, but I mean, that versatility, just so I'm looking at it right now, nobody played more than 22 minutes per game, which obviously the last 3 to 4 minutes of each game was kind of 2 dudes and 3 of our walk-ons. So bump that up to 25, 26. But I mean, no one played more than 22 minutes per game. And that kind of versatility, I don't really think it matters who starts. You just see who's playing well. If Rain Smith is 1 of 10, like he was at one point, he wasn't 1 of 10, but 2 of 10 at one point in that game. And then, sorry, my fridge is going off, and I don't know why. But yeah, if he's 2 of 10 in the game and he's just not performing well, he's not helping the team out. You've got Corin Johnson, you've got Chucky, you've got other guys that can fill in and play 28 minutes that night, and Rain only plays 18. So I don't think the starting lineup matters as much as just like we don't have to rely on Trey White or Sky Clark having to have 20 points to get us a win. James Scott could have 20. Kasean Pryor could have 20. Like there are so many dudes that could go. That I literally think by the end of this season, every single player out of the 10 out of the 11, besides Frank, Ansel Amibe, and maybe Kanai, but I think Kanai will too, will all have a 20-point game. That's a prediction that I'm willing to make because they're just so everyone can have a night. And that's so nice to not have to be like, we've got to get 20 out of him. You don't, because anyone can do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember when we talked to Mark Lieberman, I think a big question that I had, and a lot of people had really when this roster was constructed was, what's the depth look like down low? This team doesn't have a lot of meat on their bones, really, right? I mean, when you look at your starter right now in James Scott, even a Kasean Pryor, a guy that slides over to the 5 at times, when you look at guys like that, they're not a traditional big man. They can slide out, outside the 3-point line. They can bring the ball up the floor. They can do a lot of stuff that a lot of big men can't do. And I loved Mark's line of, the coaches aren't thinking about, how are we going to stop somebody else? They're thinking about how are they going to stop us? And I think that's such a good point. We saw there was definitely an opposing, a guy that could have opposed as well for Calgary down low. And Louisville just kind of neutralized that by having some bigs that are just super mobile. And they just wear them out, rack up the fouls really fast. And that's that. So it'll be interesting to see, a guy like, we bring up Brandon Huntley Hatfield a lot, but that's a guy that's going to be, a obvious name to watch, not only in the ACC, but nationally this year if NC State's as good as they were a season ago. And so when you look at a guy like that, just for instance, he's not super fleet of foot. I like having Kasean Pryor and James Scott out there with Brandon Huntley Hatfield on the floor, because I know that Kasean Pryor is going to be a matchup nightmare for a guy like that. So that's a great point that was brought up by Mark that I think about a lot. I think that it's playing out in front of our eyes. The fact that you don't necessarily need, a traditional big man in modern basketball to be super successful. And in fact, it's could behoove you in the opposite direction. To me, that's super exciting.
Yeah, I think that if there is one thing that concerns me about this team, it is the lack of a traditional big man, some interior size I think we have shot blockers. I'm actually not worried about shot blocking, but it is getting rebounds, defensively ending possessions, and then being able to match up one-on-one in the post. I think that is concerning, but you're right. Mark's right. The disadvantages that we have having to guard a post player with a Kasean Pryor or a James Scott can be remedied by making Brandon Huntley Hatfield guard Kasean Pryor, or making a guy like Armando Bacot, which he's not playing anymore, but a guy of that size and stature guard Kasean Pryor. He can't. Kasean Pryor won't be amazing defensively in the post with him, but just as much as he's going to struggle to guard him, he would also struggle to guard Kasean. So that worries me a little bit. Did you notice one thing? He crashes a lot of dudes to the offensive glass. Oh, yeah. There were multiple times where 4 dudes crashed and there wasn't even a guard. Like Corin Johnson, Rain Smith didn't get back. They were just on the perimeter ready, like if they got the board to shoot. And there were just a couple of just run out easy layups, or should have been easy layups, but maybe the select team messed it up. It's an interesting strategy. It worked against these teams, but I am curious to see how that works against ACC play and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina obviously comes to mind as a team that it would be difficult to do that against, because they're so good at getting defensive rebounds and just pushing the ball up the floor. I mean, that used to kill those Rick Pitino teams because they loved pressuring the ball. And that completely takes that out of your hands when they just get the ball off the floor so easily. So, yeah, you're right. There's some teams on the schedule that could be an interesting thing to watch, but at the same time, it's the same kind of like chicken or the egg type of scenario where it's like, okay, well, if Louisville's sending 4 guys to the glass or 3 guys to the glass every single time, and the opponents are trying to get runouts, well, if it's just a numbers game and there's getting more rebounds, then I think that's the way that the coaching staff looks at it is, okay, well, yeah, if we give up an open basket down on the other end every once in a while, that's fine. But if we're crashing the boards and getting 10, 15 offensive rebounds a game, then who cares, right? Because you're just creating opportunities for more possessions. And you have a team full of players that can shoot the ball really, really well. And it's not just that they're great prospects that can do so. They've proven that they can do so at the highest level of college basketball. And I think that's a distinction that's important to make. As we kind of like roll this into just breaking down the team, what they're capable of, I'm interested in kind of just going over each player on the roster kind of quickly and just looking at, what stood out about each one of these players and, where we kind of see them fitting in. I mean, the first guy, the guy that we talked about a lot, his name's been picking up steam quite a bit, as well as James Scott. 7 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game. Didn't miss a basket because they were all dunks. But he only played 13 minutes a game as well. Sustained an injury in that first game that we talked about a few minutes ago, where a guy went up, fouled him pretty hard. He missed both free throws because he was injured. Coaching staff told him that they didn't want him to. I don't know if they said that they didn't want him to play, but I think it was recommended. It's an exhibition. You should probably just sit this one out. And basically, what the broadcast crew said was, James Scott was like, "No, I want to play." This is his last chance to get, quality competition until the fall, right? So, play a little bit injured and you can heal up. But I thought it was fascinating that he basically said, "Hell no, I'm playing in this exhibition while we're on basically vacation in the Bahamas." And not only that, but I'm going to shoot free throws left-handed and make them both, which I thought was
That's
really
what Shannon should have done. He shouldn't have gone granny style. He should have just switched to his left hand. Maybe that was his issue.
I guess, man. I guess. But I mean, what thoughts on James Scott? I mean, is he living up to the hype? I mean, is it too I think in this type of game, it's maybe a little bit too early to tell. The sample size is too small based on the type of games that they were playing.
Yeah, I think James Scott was, if you just look at it from an outsider's perspective and you see like, oh, this dude played 19, 20 minutes a game with Coach Kelsey last year, and now he's expected to be a starter in the ACC. Like that is kind of like off-putting. You're like, there's no way this dude goes from being a bench player, a guy off the bench for a mid-major team to now starting in the ACC. And I was a little concerned too. I watched some of his tape though, and you see the intangibles, and you also realize that he is a freshman this year. Like age-wise, what they say, the 4th youngest player in college basketball last year. He's basically a true freshman this year. Right. Yeah. And you can see it. I mean, athletic, long, really good defensive feel for the game and really good offensively at just being where he needs to be, whether that's for the offensive rebound or he sees Corin Johnson driving in and he just kind of fills into that open gap, catches it, dunk. I mean, there's a reason why he shot 70% from the field last year. Just truly, truly insane, and 100% this game. So I was impressed. I think that he'll be a starter in name, but I think you'll see Noah Waterman, you'll see Kadir, I guess is what we're calling him now. I don't know where that's what he wants to go by, so that's fine with me. I don't know where that nickname came from. Kasean Pryor, like you'll see guys, just because he's starter in name, I still think it'll be probably a 20 minutes per game guy. But I was impressed, and also he's one of the 5 guys that will be on this team next year, hopefully. So excited to see his growth and happy to have him playing major minutes as an 18-year-old. But yeah, I was happy. I think he lived up to everything that everybody has been hyping him up to be.
Yeah, I mean, I like what was said on the broadcast as well. I mean, James Scott could be a guy that, in December, he's probably not going to be Louisville's best player. But maybe in March or early April, you could look at James Scott and be like, damn, he might be the best player on this team. And that sounds like a stretch right now, but because of the way that he's growing, the trajectory that he's on, once he kind of cuts his teeth a little bit against some really high quality opponents, that'll be a fascinating watch for sure. Terrence Edwards is a guy that was probably the biggest name that Louisville landed off that 35-5, right? 35-4, something like that. James Madison team led the country in wins last year, beat Wisconsin in the first round of the tournament, largely in part due to the play of Terrence Edwards. Kind of just let his, like he's allowing himself to assimilate already with the, what the coaching staff is asking each player to do, right? Like he's not at James Madison. He was the guy. They asked him to be the go-to guy, to be a facilitator, to be a kind of a score first guy, to be a guy that can score at each level, to be a high level defender. And he doesn't necessarily have to be all of that at Louisville. He just needs to be a well-rounded player. 12 points a game, 2 rebounds a game, 3 assists per game on 47% field goals and 33% from behind the arc and 22 minutes per game. Thoughts on Terrence Edwards? Again, another guy that maybe the sample size is too small so far, but I mean,
yeah, I think you're correct. If you go back and watch those James Madison games, there's a lot of times where they're like, "Fuck it, give Terrence the ball," and that's the offensive, and that's the play right there. That happens multiple times a game, and I don't think I think at times that will be something that happens, especially. We'll move the ball 20 seconds and just there's not been an open look. And then I love having him on the court then because then he can go and get his shot. But I don't think that'll be a lot of our offense this year, which I think at times, especially in that first game, you kind of noticed everyone was moving the ball and he was moving the ball well too. He averaged 3 assists per game. So he wasn't being selfish, but there were a couple plays where he was still like, I'm scoring this. Like, I'm not moving this. I'm getting this ball and I'm going to the paint. I'm attacking, as opposed to maybe Rain or Chucky just would have swung it and hit a good shot into a great shot. So I'm a little interested to see how he assimilates into this new style of offense because it's something he hasn't been doing for the last 4 years of his career. But I love the fact that when he's on the floor, we can run our offense for 20 seconds. And if nobody gets open, there's not a great look. You can just give him the ball. And with 8 seconds left to go, he's going to go tween, attack the basket, pull up for mid-range and hit it from 12 away. And that's nice to have because their offense is not always going to create a wide open look. At times you're going to have a guy go get a bucket, especially at the end of a game. I love having him on the floor.
Yeah, man, we're going to get right into the guy that everybody is kind of talking about after these games. But first, before we do that, very quickly, we are getting sisters. The State of Louisville Podcast Network is growing with the latest edition of Push Push, a Formula One podcast hosted by Louisvillians Shannon Kessler and Danielle Davis. Push Push is the girlfriend's guide to Formula One, with weekly episodes previewing and recapping races, discussing major storylines, plus covering probably the most dramatic sports outside of the lines in a way that they only can, right? It's the girlfriend's guide to Formula One. Tune in anywhere you get your podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel at The State of Lou, and then follow them on Instagram at F1 Push Push. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Mr. and Mrs. is for everyone, from a more traditional 90 proof to a cast string that's smoother. In 2013, Russ going to the hole, and boy, could we use that right now. Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon covers tastes, all different taste and preferences, 6 different bourbons that they're offering. Be among the first to try Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon, the official bourbon of the State of Louisville and the Starting 502 podcast, on shelves anywhere you find your liquor, and now online at mrandmrsbourbon.com.
So diving right into the guy that everybody's talking about, right? The guy that I think we've been pretty excited about, Jake, but we just didn't know quite what to make of it. Kasean Pryor. I mean, you go right for it. I want to hear your, kind of unfiltered, unbiased take here on the play of Kasean Pryor in these 2 games.
I don't think anybody could have. I mean, he shot 71% from the field, 55% from 3. I mean, I don't think he could have played any better. He's not going to shoot 55% from 3 for the remainder of the season. But I mean, just really, really impressive in transition. On defense, anytime someone like it's almost a mistake to have your big man set a screen if Kasean Pryor is guarding him because
Right.
he's so aggressive jumping those screens. His arms are so long. He's so disruptive. You'd be better off just leaving your big man on the block or in the corner than allowing Kasean to come in and affect that ball handler. So I mean, I know he's not going to shoot that well, and he's going to have games where he goes 0 for 4, and he's going to have games where he goes 4 for 6, like he did in that first one. And super impressed. Want to see him be a little bit more of a big man, I guess, because I think that is something that is going to be needed from him. Only averaging 4 rebounds a game. James Scott only averaged 3. Granted, Scott only played 13 minutes a game, but that is going to be difficult if your two bigs are giving you 7 boards a game. So I think if anything I could ask, it would just be get a few more boards, play a little bit more like big man. But I was impressed. The offensive versatility, the defensive versatility, it was all there. It was all showcased.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 19 points a game, basically in the same. He's scoring a point per minute at this rate.
Is that good?
Which that I hear. I'm told that's good.
Okay.
The thing that surprises me the most about Kasean Pryor is his willingness to just do whatever is needed, and how that assimilates so well with what the coaching staff is looking for. When I watched his game and his attitude towards the opposition, his kind of fiery competitive spirit, he didn't strike me as an outsider, as the type of guy that would be like that, right? Mm-hmm. As a guy that, would be doing whatever it takes for the team. I know that sounds bad, but he doesn't come across as a guy that's going to give up his touches for somebody else. He doesn't sound like a guy that, okay, if the team needs rebounds tonight, that's what I'm going to do. If the team needs assists tonight, that's what I'm going to do. If they're going to double me, then I'm going to get it to the open guy. He seemed more like a leader by example, in a way of, like you just said about Terrence Edwards, give me the ball and I'll get a basket type of thing. So I think that's what the most pleasantly surprising thing is for me about Kasean Pryor, is that he's just taking whatever the opposition gives to him. He just happens to get more than most other players on this team because of his physical skill sets and abilities. And right, if he can continue to hit the outside shot at the rate that he is going, which is damn near impossible. But if he were able to shoot like in the high 30% from 3, I mean, this is a guy that's going to be an all ACC type of player. And it's really interesting to me. He can kind of just get to his spots. He is, really good at not settling for shots. He can get downhill in a hurry. Obviously, he's the type of dude that it's just a couple steps and he's at the basket, right? But not forcing anything, not trying to play outside of his limitations. But I am, really taken aback by the way that he performed. And I mean, if you get that from Kasean Pryor, you're talking second weekend, should be the expectation. I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, that's with the pieces around him. I mean, if he is that, game in and game out, it's going to be really hard to defend.
Yeah, I'm ready to get the 40-0 tattoo right now. So you just say the word and I'll put it on my body. But yeah, I agree. He's a career like 35% 3-point shooter, 3-point field goal percentage. But so if he just maintains that, which I think he'll probably shoot better than that, just with how many open looks he's going to be able to get this year, I think he'll probably live in the 38 to 39 range. And if he does that, then I mean, you've got 5 dudes on the floor that can shoot at times, as long as when Kadir is in, he can't shoot that well. But if it's Javon Hadley instead of him, then you've got 5 dudes on the court that you have to play out at the perimeter, which just gives you an unfair amount of spacing for this offense to work with. So yeah, I agree with what you said. He was doing it all. He wasn't afraid to block a shot, make the extra pass, play hard on defense. And when you see a guy that has that kind of energy, that kind of like fuck you attitude, you don't always expect that. But I mean, he was ultimate team player from what we saw in those 2 games.
Yeah, this is as cliche as it gets, but he's the type of guy that you would hate to play against, but love to have on your team. I mean, obviously if Louisville played South Florida last year, he would have pissed everybody off. Over under on number of technicals that Kasean Pryor receives in this coming season. I'm going to set it at 7.5.
Okay, I was gonna set it at like 5.5, so I guess I'll go under.
Under?
I mean, I know he's a fiery dude. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way I can look up how many technicals he's received in his college career. He's a fiery dude. I didn't notice him talking to the refs a lot. Granted, there wasn't a lot to talk to the refs about. They're winning by so much. But yeah, I'll say under 7.5, but I think it'll be close.
I mean, the Calgary Dinos were not big Kasean Pryor fans. I don't know if you caught at the end of the first, you probably did, or at the end of the second game, or end of the first half of the second game. Sorry. It seemed like the coaching staff was like really pushing to try to get some sort of flagrant foul called on Pryor. And he was really under their skin, which was interesting to see in an exhibition game in the Bahamas in July, or I guess, July. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to what he can bring to the table. Another guy that obviously stood out as probably maybe the biggest piece that Louisville landed in this offseason was Chucky Hepburn. If you look at his stats, nothing really jumps off the page tremendously, right? I mean, he led the team in assists with 5.5 assists per game, only 5.5 points per game and 3 boards per game. Shooting 33% from the field, 25% from beyond the arc. Thoughts on Louisville starting point guard?
Yeah, I watched his game a decent amount at Wisconsin. I've gone back and watched some of it. The defense is immaculate. I mean, he is a Peyton Siva level of defender. He doesn't put it on display full court all the times, but when it's half court, I mean, he's so quick. His hands are so fast, and he's so strong in such a small frame. He doesn't get pushed around by bigger guards. It's so impressive. His offensive game, he is a better point guard than I think he is like offensive player, if that makes sense. Has more of like a calming presence, will almost always make the right pass, won't often force shots. I don't think he's the best scorer from a point guard position, but he doesn't need to be on this team. If he just locks up the best perimeter player on each team for 25 minutes each night, knocks down 1 or 2 threes, and gets 4 or 5 assists, he will be perfect for this team. That will be a perfect role for him. So I was really impressed, and especially in that Dinos game, you saw his defense. I mean, it's just right. It's insane. We haven't seen a defender like that since 2013, 2014.
Yeah. I mean, so Pat Kelsey said of Chucky Hepburn that he gives Chucky the ball at 7:00 and he brings it back to him nice and safely at 9, which I love that. I love the fact that he is unselfish in every way possible, right? Like most of his scoring happens late in the shot clock when he just has to become a creator, or he has to become a scorer at that point. So, if I got to be coach for the day and I was just setting goals for each player for Chucky, every game, my goal for him would just be get me 3 steals and get me 3 assists, or get me 10 assists. Now, obviously those are really high, marks, but that's the type of game that I would want to see out of Chucky, right? He's a guy that can shoot the ball. He is a guy that can score the ball. But I just want to see him continue to be, for 20 to 25 minutes, the most menacing lockdown defender, that we've seen in the last decade at Louisville. And then just facilitating, creating for others on the offensive end. And then just, as a tertiary sort of form, just scoring when needed. But really, I mean, I think what you saw from him over the last week is exactly what Louisville players Louisville fans should be asking for. I think that's what you want in a point guard. And especially in a system like this, that's the type of point guard that you want and need. And I will say as well, it was interesting to see when Chucky came off the court and Corin Johnson came in, when they weren't playing together. It's not that Corin Johnson wasn't, playing well. He absolutely was. But there was definitely a very noticeable drop off on defense. Now, when Chucky and Corin are in the game together, that's really fun to watch. And Rain Smith is a better defender, I think, than he gets credit for as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, one of the more exciting players to watch on this team. And you see why Wisconsin fans are just at Louisville fans' throats on social media.
Yeah.
And, that had to have stung losing a player like that.
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't think the stats did or will tell the Chucky Hepburn story correctly this season. He'll probably average, if I had to guess, 8 to 10 points a game, somewhere around there. Probably 4 assists a game, 2 or 3 rebounds, 1 or 2 steals a game. But the impact that it'll have on the game defensively and just as a consistent decision maker it will not be able to be recorded statistically. So I'm excited for him. I don't think you could have picked a better. I mean, there are more talented players out there, obviously, but for the role that he needs to fill, I don't know if there was a better player to pick.
Man, I'm looking across this list of players, and it's like, we have so many things to say about each player individually. Obviously, it's hard to kind of get all 13 piled in at once, right? But each time we go down the list, I'm like, damn, like he's a great asset, great piece.
Mm-hmm.
No more is that true than for Kadir Talori. This is a guy, as everybody that listens to the podcast knows, this is my guy. But I think it's becoming a lot more people's guy, right? Like, I think that this is, he's going to become a household name in the league this year just because he does everything so well, except for shooting. He does everything so well. Athleticism, just off the charts. Like, when's the last time Louisville had a guy that was like 6'5", 6'6", and he could just like reach, he could get up and get a rebound like above the square on the backboard. Like, just absolutely filthy athleticism, 9.5 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, 5 assists per game on 70% shooting. That's what you can probably come to expect from Abubakar Traore. Obviously a great finisher around the rim, solid free throw shooter. For whatever reason, just not great, not like a great jump shooter.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not in his arsenal yet. But my comment was that basically if you took Dwayne Sutton and took away all of his shooting ability and allocated that specifically to just like freakishly athletic play, that would be Abubakar Traore. Obviously, I saw some people compare Javon Hadley to Dwayne Sutton. I think everybody just likes comparing people to Dwayne Sutton, but
everybody wants Dwayne Sutton.
Yeah, everybody wants a Dwayne Sutton on their team, and understandably so. But yeah, thoughts quickly on Traore.
Yeah, I hate that his nickname can't be Abu. I really was hoping that would stick, but I guess we'll go with Kadir. Yeah, he's like a my player that was built and you just didn't at all pay attention to 3-point shooting and you just put it everywhere else. Impacts the game in so many ways. Scoring on the interior, playing defensively on the interior. I mean, that block that he had, I think it was in that first game where it literally looked like he blocked the ball from the top corner of the backboard. It is what it appeared to be. Just insane. And the amount of assists too, 5 assists per game from your 4-man is insane. He'll probably shoot 60% from the field this year. Another guy that knows what he is, what he does well, and he doesn't stray from outside of that, which is something we haven't seen in a while. We had dudes last year that were good at 2 things, but wanted to do everything. And I think that's really impressive. God, if he could just shoot 30% from 3 and make his defender stand on the perimeter, he would unlock so many things. And I'm sure that's something they're going to work on.
Yeah. I mean, you see in some of the highlight tapes and stuff that they're putting together, you have James Scott taking and making threes, although got to get some rotation on the ball, dog. Like he's literally just like state fair ring tossing it. But no, I mean, they're clearly working on shooting quite a bit. I'm not sure what the situation is there where, Traore feels no need to shoot. I mean, he didn't even look when he gets the ball at the top of the key, doesn't even try to shoot the ball. But I think there's definitely an early emphasis as well placed on just trying to pass the ball, as much as they possibly can and passing up a good shot for a great shot. So Javon Hadley is a name besides Pryor. I think this is a name that really stood out, quite a bit for a lot of fans. And I guess the one thing I'd say about Javon Hadley is that's a guy that, outside of maybe Chucky, I think might be the number 2 guy for me is a guy that you have to have in during crunch time. And maybe it's just the opposition. I'm not sure, but I mean, I really like what Javon Hadley brought to the table. I mean, when you look back at his career at Colorado, his coach Tad Boyle, right? Is that his name?
Yeah. Golden? No, yeah,
No, Tad Boyle, I believe is his name. A lot of positive praise, basically calling Javon Hadley like the glue of the team. And I could see him playing a similar role for Louisville this season. Thoughts on Javon?
Yeah, these next two guys we're going to talk about are two of my personal favorites. I don't think they're the best players on the team, but they're my two favorite players in this team. I mean, Javon Hadley just plays the game so smoothly, so maturely, something that you rarely see from a college athlete. I mean, you can tell that he has played college basketball for 4 years. You will rarely ever see him force anything. He's just going to take that open three. He's going to get the layup. He's rarely ever going to force something. Defensively, he's so strong. 15.5 points per game in these two games, 7 boards, 1.5 assists, shot 60% from three, which won't happen. He's more of a 40, high 30% 3-point shooter. But I mean, like you said, a guy that I want in last 4 minutes of a game, 100%, because he will always make the right decision. He will almost never force anything, and he will play incredible defense.
Yeah, I mean, he's just solid all around, and that's what I love. I mean, that's what I love about Traore too. Now, obviously, Hadley is a fantastic shooter from beyond the arc, consistently been a solid shooter his entire career. But those are two guys that I really feel like I already trust in quite a bit. That says a lot. Corin Johnson, a guy, what I posted when, just from watching 5 minutes of Corin Johnson was he's a guy that, flips the light switch and he's in bed before the light goes out type of thing. Like he is cat quick. And I don't think it stood out as much when I was watching like some of his highlights. I mean, he was definitely fast, but it feels like he's got, maybe even he's got a quicker first step than anybody we've seen on this squad the last few years, which is something that's been sorely missed. Thoughts on Corin Johnson?
He's my favorite player on this team. I love him. I love the energy. I love he's not Chucky Hepburn defensively, but no one is. He's a step below that, but it's not too many steps below that. To me, he's kind of like, I remember everyone was like, we got to keep Tylor. We got to keep Tylor. We brought in Tylor, except for give him 2 more years of seasoning. Like, allow him to have that consistent 3-point jump shot. Oh, hold on. Daisy, no, ma'am. Sorry, she had a brawl. She's not old enough for that yet.
She's not old enough for brawls.
She's not. But no, Corin Johnson, I mean, goodness gracious. My favorite player, like I said, electric quick. He had a sequence where it was 3 plays in a row. They tried to bring ball pressure, full court ball pressure in that first game against Bahamas Select. He beats the press down the middle, lob to James Scott, dunk. Very next time, forces a turnover, pull up 3, wet, and then gets another steal. And then Kasean tries to leads him too far, goes out of bounds. But I mean, just perfect player off the bench. I think his talent justifies him starting, but he seems to be he's 6th man of the year last year at Washington. A perfect bench player. 15 points a game, 6 assists. I love him. He's my favorite player. I can't speak highly enough about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's like a step up from, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of, I'm not blanking on his name. To combo guard that played under Chris Mack, Darius Perry. Reminds me of that a little bit when you brought a Darius Perry off the bench, a guy that could be like instant offense, be a pest on defense, super quick, has the ability to create for others, but solid shooter, super confident shooter. I don't think that's the perfect comparison, but just the speed and the overall ability and instincts from Corin Johnson. I mean, it's fantastic. And this is a guy, like you said, that's a guy that he could be a building block on this team. It's a guy that I don't see him necessarily going to the league after this season. I would hope that he'd want to stick around for another year. With that in mind, I mean, could absolutely be a building block for next year or the year after. if you
And I
look
will say
at
one more thing. I was
Yeah.
impressed by his willingness to move the ball. He kind of strikes you because the Darius Perry, Tyler Johnson type player typically just gets the ball and ISOs and makes something happen or
Right.
creates an assist after he's had the ball for 10, 15 seconds. I mean, there were times when Corin played out of offense, but there were so many more times where he was just making the correct decision within the offense at such a high level. So just
Right.
really, really impressed me.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. And he's a perfect example of a guy that's buying in to what the staff is selling. I mean, when I think about Corin Johnson as well, I think about the potential of Corin Johnson and Kobe Rogers backcourt next season. And that's super exciting. That's a lot of speed. That's a lot of getting to the basket, a lot of really quality defending, and a lot of winning guys that have been a part of some winning programs and have the ability to do some great stuff at this level. Quickly, Rain Smith. I mean, pretty much what I expected from Rain Smith. You could say a lot more about him as a player, and maybe you have some thoughts as well. But love the confidence as a shooter. Love that he's more of an all-around player than people will ever give him credit for.
Yeah, I mean, shot 20 times, all 20 were from behind the arc. So in that sense, he did exactly what we expected. Didn't shoot as well as I think he would probably hope, but I mean, still shot 35% from three. If everybody on this team shoots 35%, you're thrilled. But for his standards, that's not what we're expecting. We're expecting more of a 40% three-point shooter. But like you said, impressed in other ways. Averaged 4 boards a game, 3 assists per game, moves the ball really well, isn't going to like force a three, is really only took open threes. And it's crazy that he had 20 open threes in 2 games. There's never really a shot that I saw where I was like, damn, man, come on, don't shoot that. Anytime he shoots, I expect it to go in. And like you said earlier, defensively, he's not a liability. A lot of times when you get those smaller 3-point specialists, you're like, yeah, like Ryan McMahon, like, yes, dude, he has the potential to hit 4 threes in 5 minutes and completely change the game. But every time he's on defense, that the defense is like, that's a mismatch. You're going to be hurting on that side. With Rain, I really didn't feel like he was a liability. He's not Corin, he's not Chucky, but I think he plays good enough defense to where he won't hurt us.
Yeah, when Rain Smith was the first player that announced his intentions to join this team, I was excited because we had a verified sniper, right? But I wasn't as familiar with what he brings to the table as an overall player. And it is pretty impressive that he really does it all. It's just that his shooting ability and confidence is so much higher than what you're used to seeing. That's what stands out the most. But he definitely holds his own on the defensive end thus far. Crashes the board, decent rebounder, knows what to do in this offense, which is a huge key. And obviously he's going to come up in a major way on multiple occasions this season. Probably the biggest surprise of the two games in the Bahamas was Connie Roots, right? 9 points, 8.5 boards, 1.5 assists, shooting 42% from beyond the arc. All of the shots he made, you put a note here as well. All the shots he made were from 3. Thoughts on Connie Ruths? I mean, his game was polar opposite of what I kind of expected to see, really.
Yeah. First off, and they said it on the broadcast the way you're saying it. When I was watching his high school games, they called him Kanai Roots. So yeah, we'll have to get some sort of clarification there.
Either. It really could be. Yeah.
Very easily. Someone just needs to ask him, hey, how do you say this? I've never seen this name before. But yeah, impressed me. There was, especially in that first game, there were quite a few times where the speed of the game was just a little too quick for him. He got the ball and he attacked, and you could tell he jumped past, and it's a lofted pass there, and it was just a little too fast for him. But that comes with the territory of being a freshman and playing in your first Division I basketball game. But I was impressed. He really was not in high school a knockdown 3-point shooter. He would shoot like 1 to 3 a game if he was open. But he shot 42% from 3 and shot them confidently. And if he comes in, plays solid defense, rebounds really well, which is something this team needs, and knocks down open threes, I think that's a role that he can fill for 10 minutes each game, 15, 20 if someone gets hurt or if he's playing well. So I was impressed. I really didn't expect much from Kanai this season, but after seeing these 2 exhibition games, I'm not upset if he plays 12 minutes a game. I think he provides something that this team needs, and you give him more minutes and he's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, I'm very interested in learning more about him, right? Like, this is a guy that's kind of been put on the back burner because of his youthfulness, and because of we just know less about Connie Roos than anybody else. So quickly, let's go over a little bit of what Connie Roos is all about. He's from Washington, D.C., attended IMG Academy. His personal goal at U of L is to win a championship. Good. That's a good goal. He and teammate Kobe Rogers have the same love for the number 11. So he settled with number 9 because it blends well with his name, a.k.a. Kanai. So I think he could be right. K9, Kanai. I don't know. Let's see. The basketball player he most admires is LeBron James, but it feels kind of like it's Earl Clark. A lot of Earl Clark vibes from him.
He just hasn't watched enough Earl yet.
Few people know this about him, but he originally wanted to play football or hockey instead of basketball. Interesting.
Don't see a lot of 6'9" hockey players.
You don't. The best athlete he's ever faced is Rob Dillingham. I could believe that.
Yeah.
He chose to play at U of L because it felt like family from day one. His favorite athlete other than basketball is Lamar Jackson. His favorite book is The Great Gatsby. His favorite actor is Will Smith. His favorite movie is Friday. Comedian is Cat Williams. Big fan of NBA YoungBoy, Gunna, Huncho, and Lil Baby. Favorite food is Italian. And
we got to work on some of those rappers that he likes.
Yeah, but that's
mainly just young boy. But hey, I'm a 27-year-old white man. No one should listen to me when it comes to my hip hop recommendations.
I was gonna say that's just the generation, bro. PB&J and Go-Go applesauce squeeze are his midnight snacks of choice.
I'm back in on Kanai.
I'm back in on him. Kanai Roots. But yeah, maybe we should start calling him K9, and then that'll just stick. But
I like K9.
It stood out to me though. Kobe Rogers, even though he's not playing this season, he said he wanted that number 11, which I guess that means that they both plan on being here next year. So, but no, Kanai, didn't come in like you said as a sniper, and he was firing away from beyond the 3-point line and looked more than adequate. But no, I mean, I like the fact that he was crashing the boards, doing whatever the team needed, 8.5 rebounds per game and 1.5 assists per game. So he's playing within himself, moving the ball well, played more than anybody else on the team, saves Terrence Edwards. So, could be a guy to watch, like eventually could work his way into kind of that 6-man role along Corin Johnson as well. Noah Waterman's the last guy. Noah Waterman. I owe Noah Waterman an apology. Because I've not been a hater by any means of Noah Waterman, but I will say that I was a skeptic of Noah Waterman because I wasn't sure how he'd fit on this team. I think a lot of people were super excited when he was added, but this is a coaching staff that they've assembled this roster based on analytics, at least partially. Every coach works on the eye test. But Noah Waterman, specifically for me, when I'm looking at the statistics, he was not a super impactful defender at BYU. He wasn't a super impactful guy as far as doing anything outside of dunks and shooting threes, and that concerned me because he kind of comes in as a center essentially, a 5 or a 4 on this roster, right? But I take it all back. and I don't know if it's just his development since he's arrived from BYU. I don't know if it's just that he fits really well with the system, but culturally he feels like a great fit. He feels like a guy that can just kind of put the team on his back at times. Absolutely cold-blooded shooter, and just, the hustle is out of this world. He's the type of guy that now that I've seen him play, like I really want him on the squad and think that he can be super impactful. What are your thoughts on Noah Waterman?
Yeah, he did, like you said. I've watched a couple of his games from BYU. Shooter, slasher. That's what he does well. Not really an impactful defender, but was impressed me a little bit more than I expected on the defensive side of things. Had a couple blocks that I was like, that man kind of got up. Like, it was impressive. But I think he is who he is. He's a shooter. He's gonna, anytime he's open, he's gonna shoot it, and I want him to shoot it. And he's gonna slash. If a guy's playing him too tight on that jumper, he's gonna attack the basket, and he plays at a pretty high elevation at the rim. So if he brings a little bit of defense and a little bit more rebounding, I think that he's a guy that's going to be extremely impactful. So I was happy. I wish we could have saw him for 2 games, but in the 1 game that we saw him, he had quite a few moments where I was like, okay, Noah, I see you.
Yeah, stylistically, he fits really well on this roster. And shout out to Chris Hatfield for putting this out there. But he actually went through and did the kind of sabermetrics analytics look at how this Louisville team played its 2 scrimmages. They took 78 shots from beyond the arc, 62 shots in the paint. So way more shots from 3 than from inside the paint. And then 15 shots from the no man's land, essentially. And that's how this team's going to play, right? So that's what Noah Waterman brings to the table. He brings threes and dunks. And that's what a lot of these guys are. They are very adept at slashing, scoring close to the basket, creating off the dribble, and making threes. And that is, that's a sight for sore eyes for sure. 32 made threes over the course of 2 games. That's like a quarter of a full season in the Kenny Payne era. 32 made threes. One thing we didn't even get to: 38 assists in the first game, 22 in the second. 38 assists would be a college basketball record.
Like, for everybody? I knew it was a record for us. For everybody?
As far as I know, I saw maybe it'd just be Louisville, but I mean,
38 assists is insane.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at UConn from last year, right? UConn led the nation in assists with 18.8 assists per game. They did not hit the 30 assist mark in any game a season ago. So, I mean, 38 is a lot of freaking assists. Like, Louisville is touched. I think their previous record, well, I guess their current record, I think it's 27 in a game. And I could be totally off on that, but I'm pretty sure like 38 is way up there. And again, look, we know the situation. I understand, the reality of the situation is that they're basically playing a all-star team that, didn't have the cohesiveness of their squad, and everything should be taken with a grain of salt. But 38 assists, I mean, damn, on 43 made baskets, that is fantastic. That is,
and I think that it's impressive that they still played that way in spite of who they were playing. A Kenny Payne led team would have had 10 assists, and everyone would have just been playing an all-star style of basketball. But this team wasn't, despite the fact that the team they were playing against was a little disorganized in the way they played defense and offense. It still didn't change the way they played. They still moved the ball crisply. They still took a great shot instead of a good shot. They still played fast. They still played intensely on defense. And I think that was impressive that this team came in with an identity and they played through it the whole entire, 80 minutes that we saw them in the Bahamas. So, I mean, that was so impressive. I'm ready. I have not looked on FanDuel or DraftKings yet. Whatever the odds are on to make the NCAA tournament, to win the ACC, I don't care what they are. I'm throwing $100 down. I'm fired up for this team. I don't think people are quite understanding how good this team can be. I think if we miss the tournament, I would be pretty shocked. And if we make it past the Sweet 16, it would not surprise me at all. And and once you get past there, you've got potential to do anything. So I think this team has a ridiculously high ceiling.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think it's like out of the realm. Like, it's not getting too excited or over the top to say something like that. Right. And once, second game of the season, right? you host Tennessee, a team that's going to be top 25. You'll see right off the bat, like, how do you stack up against some of the nation's best? Louisville set a goal publicly when they released their, essentially their financial plans for the next year. And they said that it's basically a stated goal that they want to sell out one basketball game. I think they'll sell out more than one this season. Let's quickly get into some questions that people hit us up. T-Will of the Power 10 Network. And we both already kind of answered this question. Over under of 12.5 games won next year. And I hope he understands he's responding to a basketball account, not a football account.
Yeah, good. Smash the over 12.5. I mean, I'm sure it's just because it was 4 wins the first year for KP, 8 in the second. So yeah, smash that.
Sure.
Smash that.
Right. And then who do you have as a sleeper that will average 10 plus points?
I think multiple dudes will average 10 plus. I guess if you,
right.
I don't know, sleeper, I think like Terrence will average 10 plus. Kasean will average 10 plus. I think Chucky will go a little bit short. Kadir will probably go a little short. Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, I guess sleeper Corin Johnson. Corin Johnson to me is 100% scoring 10 plus points per game off the bench. So I guess if you had to say sleeper, it would be him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, Rain Smith was Charleston's leading scorer last year. So it's hard to say he's a sleeper to score 10 points a game. A sleeper. I'm going to go James Scott.
Yeah.
I think in a standard college basketball game, the way that the offense will move and the way the teams will start to guard Louisville will free James Scott up a lot more for lob dunks. I'm going to go James Scott there. Max Rothstein.
That's just 5 dunks a game. He can do that.
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Max Rothstein, hopefully he's the nephew of John and he has a good in with us.
Yes.
He's asked us a few questions. By the way, shout out to Max. That dude is always on it. He's always ready to hear a new starting 502, which I love.
Yes. Over
under 25 on the amount of games this year. We mentioned Noah Waterman's number 93 and how unique it is. I'm going to go over. Things to be said in every game. Every game that Noah Waterman plays.
Yes, 100%.
Player that you were most surprised
was there a reason
by.
Behind the 93? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Is that the year he was born, 1993?
No, so yeah, that was the original joke, right? And whenever everybody said, "No, he was born in 97," what do you think he's 30 years old? I'm like, I understand. Like the whole reason was because I was born in 93. So yes, it stands out that he's not actually 31, but it just sounds like it's just that would make sense, right? Player that you're most surprised by in the 2 games and most underwhelmed by.
Okay, so most surprised by Kenai Roots. If you would have told me that he was a freshman that played just scrub minutes this whole entire season, it would not have surprised me at all to see him average 4 minutes a game and get in 15 to 20 games where it's a blowout either way. But after seeing him in these last 2 exhibition games, he can play. Like I said, if he plays 10, 12, 15 minutes a game, I'm cool with that. Underwhelmed by, it's hard to say because everybody played so well. I guess maybe Terrence Edwards, but he still played well just because I don't know if he's 100% bought into that team ball movement. And not that he won't be, it's just that he's never played like that before. But he's going to bring so much to the team. It's unfair to call that underwhelming. You could also say maybe Rain, but it's only because he didn't shoot well. But it's hard to answer that one.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you fully. I think it has to be Terrence Edwards, but only because, like you said, we expected him to be maybe the leading scorer, and I still think he very well could be. So, do you think that Kenai is going to play a bigger role than originally thought based off of what we saw from him in the Bahamas? I think we kind of already answered this. Yeah, I think that's a resounding yes. I would be surprised to see him get 25, 30 minutes in a game or two this year. Absolutely. From Jacob Lane, you may know him. After watching the 2 games, any particular 5 guys that you'd like to see play together more, maybe even a starting 5. What you got?
I think, I think like a Terrence Edwards, Kasean Pryor, Javon Hadley, Corin Johnson, Rain Smith. Is that 5? That's 5, right? Rain, Corin, Javon, Kasean, Terrence. I mean, that team puts up 140 points per game. Not actually, but I mean, damn near. The defense would probably fall off a little bit, taking out James Scott and Chucky Hepburn and Kadir. But my God, those 5 guys together, all 5 can shoot 35% plus from 3, can create their own shot, will move the ball well. My goodness, give me Corin, Rain, Javon, Kasean, and Terrence Edwards for 5 minutes a game and just let me smile.
Yeah, I haven't given a ton of thought to it, but yeah, I mean, any lineup where all 5 guys can shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you put Noah Waterman at the 5 there. Especially if you're playing a team that's allows you to play kind of that small ball style. Waterman's shown that he has the chops down low to at least hold his own. So yeah, I mean, I think any lineup, Jacob, that gives us 5 legitimate shooters. I'm trying to think as well. I guess that would put Kasean and Noah in at the same time. But I mean, I don't know. I could see, Kasean Pryor and Noah Waterman playing the 3 and 4. So I mean, there's so many options here, and like I said, I mean, there's a endless number of lineups that you could assemble together. I'm trying to think. I mean, like, I don't want to. I feel like when you look at Kenai Roos, like, I feel like maybe it's a bit of a flash in the pan and not indicative of what his actual game will be like. Like, he feels like a guy that's a big, second chance opportunity guy. Like, he feels like he's a putback guy. Feels like he's going to be grabbing a lot of offensive boards and going back up strong. He doesn't feel like a guy that's going to be floating out on the perimeter, taking a lot of threes. I think that's what the opposition gave him. But I mean, Kenai, we really got to figure that out. Ruth's, he just kind of stands out to me as, I feel like he could be versatile. Like, he could be used in so many different ways. So I don't want to just throw him into my lineup necessarily, but yeah, I think maybe Corin, Rain. I'm trying to think of maybe Hadley, Corin, Rain, Hadley, Waterman, and who's my 4 or 5? Maybe who would be a shooter? Maybe Kasean Pryor. So who would we say? Waterman, Pryor, Hadley, Rain, Corin.
Yep. Yeah, that was mine. Except for you took
lineup
out Terrence Edwards and put in Noah Waterman, so you just went a little bit bigger. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You could combine, you could put 50 different combinations of starters into this, and I'd be like, yes, that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Thoughts about, as we close here, thoughts about the coaching staff and the way that they approach this. I saw a few buddies saying that they felt like Louisville should approach this as like, this is kind of like the fun trip to the Bahamas. And next time we know where we're going, we kind of know what we're doing. We've been there, done that, and we're just going to go do it again. That's not how the coaching staff treated this. I love the quote from Coach where he basically said, well, I already work for Louisville, which is like working at Disneyland. So, I'm not going to have any more fun at the water park than I'm locked in my hotel room. So it was fascinating to me to see that he just locked himself into the room for like 4 straight days, preparing for exhibition games, essentially. So to me, I mean, that's what stood out the most as far in the way of the coaching staff. I
think the coaching staff could have, like you said, came and treated it maybe a little bit more fun, not taking it so seriously. But Just realized I didn't have my microphone there. Don't know how well you heard it. That'll help.
No,
I had to
I
plug my
heard it a little
laptop in. Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, the coaching staff could have taken a little bit more lightly, more of a team bonding thing, go to the Bahamas, enjoy. Let's see how we play together against some different competition. But I think they played it correctly. They had so much momentum coming into this Bahamas trip where everyone is excited. You hired a new guy. He impresses in that first press conference. He goes and signs an incredible transfer portal class. And then what does he do from there? And all he did was add to the excitement by winning. God, I wrote it down. What was it? We won those two games 222 to 130. Right. And just keep that momentum going. Keep people excited. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't take it lightly because, God, everyone was at least semi-excited and had dreams whenever KP came there. And then we saw the first exhibition game and we're like, what the fuck? Right. And immediately breaks her hip. The momentum's gone and people are like, oh my God. Like, and then, I mean, slowly you just saw it. So they took full advantage of the opportunity they had here to ride this momentum into October and keep people excited.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still anxious to kind of see it like in real time. Like I'm anxious to see it in an actual game just because you never truly know what the opposition looked like. Like you will know when you play a Tennessee or an Ole Miss or Kentucky or something of that nature. So, that's what piques my interest the most is, when do we get to see them next? And so,
yeah, can we just do one more? Can we do one more exhibition?
Right.
Please?
Like, let's do something. I'm, if anybody's listening and they have any sort of powers to make this happen, let's get some open runs going. Like, let's do something. It's going to be a long basketball offseason, but I will say this, Jake, August 31st, we're basically looking at less than 4 weeks away from football season.
I'll be there.
And what that means, Jake, is that we are getting dangerously close as well to basketball season. And so the wait isn't going to be as long as it feels like it's going to be from right now, because we will have a lot of other stuff going on. We'll have a lot more conversations to have as well. Things are really heating up on the 2025 and 2026 class scene as well. And, we can start preparing for what the schedule looks like and what Louisville's actually going to be facing as we go into the non-conference. But until next time, make sure you drink your Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Make sure you follow us on X/Twitter at PressMeyer, at UofL_updates, at the State of Lou on X. You can also follow us at the State of Louisville on Instagram. And then if you feel so inclined, you definitely should. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're not watching on YouTube, you absolutely can watch on YouTube. And while you're there, make sure that you subscribe to the State of Louisville. The more of a following we can gather there, that could open up a lot more avenues and give you guys a lot more content. And we can't wait to bring you that sort of stuff. So until next time, starting 502 podcast, get out of here and go Cards.
Go Cards.